People who have had a stalker, how did you realize you were being stalked and what ended up happening? My wife did. It became a real problem. He was a maintenance man at the school where she taught. She was throwing out a lot of old, damaged books. He asked if could have them for his kids, of course. After that he wanted to always be there, wherever my wife was. He was always sweeping or cleaning near her room. Then one day in the winter, my wife got a flat right after leaving school. It was getting dark and her new best friend is there to fix it. While changing the tire, he started asking sexual questions. He wanted to know if she ever had a black man. Of course she said nothing. It got worse and the school administration was ignoring it. I was now going way out of my way to take her and to pick her up from school. She was scared. Then he said something to her while she was eating in the cafeteria. She lost it. She just started screaming and crying for him to leave her alone. They sent her home for a few days paid leave. Since the school was no help, I went to see 2 school board members I knew, but not well. I told them that I had hired an attorney and would be suing the school district unless my wife felt safe. They moved the custodian to another school, but it took months before my wife felt safe. The custodian got in trouble at the next school and was arrested. We never heard from him again. I caught him jerking off in the window. Long story short, my husband and I moved into our new home. Weird guy directly behind us was weird in the window. Turns out he was jerking off. Stalked online, got my number. Told me this was basically God's plan. He prayed for a beautiful woman and here I was. How my kids were gonna be his. Wild shit. I have a weird kind of related story. There is a man in my town that for the last 15 years I see him constantly. Almost everywhere I go he's there. At least 3 times a month. The grocery store, the corner store, the gas station, Walmart, the liquor store. Occasionally we catch each other's eye and look at each other like you again, and kinda laugh it off. It has come to be a little bit of a joke where I will come home and tell my husband. Guess who I saw at the store today? The only catch, he's always at these places first. So it's Emmy who looks like the stalker. Edit, lots of bad grammar and words. I worked as a secretary at an adult school when I was 18. An adult student kept bothering me, taking pictures of me outside the office, etc. I quit that job and got him banned from the school. Fast forward 3 years later, I'm in a relationship, 6 months pregnant, and I'm working at a doctor's office. A police officer shows up and tells me I've had a private investigator on me for a few weeks, but he reported his client to the police because his client said he was my husband, but the PI, after following me for a few weeks, figured out he wasn't and was stalking me. He went to jail for a few days, never heard from him again. It's been 19 years. Freaky as shit. I've never had the threatening stalker, but when I was much younger, I did have one of those soft-core stalkers. It was the custodian in my building at work. We had a glass front door, and he would lean against it while I was at the front desk. He would watch me as I walked to my car at the end of the day. He didn't ever really speak to me though. One day I entered the building in a skirt, and he was on his hands and knees cleaning the baseboards, which put his head about the same level as my nethers. I passed by him in the hall, giving him as wide a berth as I could, hugging the opposite wall really, when he looks up and says, "Something sure. Smells good." I bolted to my office suite and said to my boss, "Feel like I need a hug and a shower." My boss, my former mentor, my now dear friend, threw his hands up when I told him what the stalker said and said, "That's it. I've had it." First he tried to handle things professionally and wrote the property manager, who said that I must have been mistaken, and he was complimenting my perfume, which I didn't wear because another co-worker was allergic and it was a small space. When that didn't work, he decided to patiently lie in wait. Then the next time the stalker went to look for me at the front desk, boss sits me elsewhere in the office and confronts him. He never told me what he said or how the conversation went, but the stalker quit shortly thereafter. He offered to bring me home after the club. I thought it was nice. But then he knew where I lived. For the next 3 months, he was always there when I left my house. He was suddenly on the campus when he studied somewhere else. A few times a week, he would be standing and waiting in front of my door, asking the neighbors for my spare keys, because he was my boyfriend and he lock himself out. Fortunately, they didn't believe him. He left letters, roses, cough, and one day a knife. A lot of times when he was waiting in front of my door, I would be sitting in my apartment in silence, hoping that he didn't hear me and would leave soon. He was sometimes there until 3 a.m. One of course blocked him from the beginning. Told him many times to leave. He said that he could hear our babies and I would rob us of our future together. I talked to the police. They couldn't do anything because he didn't break a law. One day he called from a different number. My friend picked up and just screamed at him to leave me alone. And then he did. He wasn't in front of my door anymore, not on campus, not in the supermarket. Just gone. But still today, I get panic attacks if I see a man with his body time and brown curly hair in the corner of my eye. I don't know if it's considered stalking, but this girl I was dating in high school's mom hired a private investigator to follow me around. When I went to meet her parents, her mom showed me pictures of me smoking cigars, buying beer, dipping, and even one of me working on my car. I ended up breaking up with her a few months later, but I still never understood why a grown-ass adult would hire a PI to follow around a 16-year-old. There was this weird dude that used to call my house when I was 16. One day when my sister, 13, she answered the landline and heard a man start asking her questions about who she was, name and age, etc. My sister thought it was one of her friends messing around and didn't think much of it. Later that day my mum got answered the phone to the same dude asking for the girl. He proceeded to call about 50 times a day from 3 different London landlines. He never spoke to my sister after the first time, but always asked for her. He was vulgar and threatening when my dad spoke to him. In the end we had to pay to have all 3 of the numbers blocked for 6 months or so. The police didn't care. If I recall, it's because he was calling from hundreds of miles away. Even though I never spoke to him, it was just so unsettling hearing the phone ring so often. I think we unplugged it a lot of the time before getting him blocked. We have no idea who he was or why he harassed us like that. I imagine maybe he just spent all day calling numbers until people answered. I knew because he used to be my friend and would attempt to call, text, or message me non-stop after I stopped being friends with him. He also claimed he had people who would keep an eye on me. I had to get a new phone number, block every fake account he created to get past other blocks and keep people who knew me in the loop about him. Finally, after threatening to kill me when everything came to a head, aka after I got sick of his weird obsessive behavior followed by homophobic rants, when I called him out on it, he managed to call me from another unknown number and threatened to kill himself if I didn't give him a chance, romantically, despite him claiming to be straight. I blocked him again, and I have no idea if he did what he claimed he would do or not. I don't want to know either. I have been stalked by several guys. The scariest one was my ex. He would wait outside my apartment in his car. If I wasn't there, he was at my work waiting in the parking lot. He would call me at random times from random numbers. He would threaten my friends, asking them what my location was. He would contact my friends through their social media since I didn't have any accounts. He threatened a neighbor of mine and almost broke my door down. My landlord ended my contract early because he feared for my safety. It got to the point that I thought he was going to kill me. Worst part of this, after 2 weeks of our breakup, he was already with someone else. So, he was literally doing this while dating another person. It was 3 years of terror. Used to take dance lessons. My ex was so controlling, I found out he would drive past the class just after it started to see if my car was there and then would check that I went home after. If I went anywhere without clearing it with him first, he would go insane. It began happening everywhere I went. He said it was to keep me safe. In reality, it's because he had control issues. Once we broke up, it continued. When I started dating another man, he broke into the house and messed with our home to try and scare my new boyfriend off. He slashed car tires. Followed us to supermarkets. He was everywhere. Eventually my new boyfriend had a go on a street corner, and the ex finally disappeared. Took a long time to not look over the shoulder. Edit. Ex went face to face on the street corner with new BF to do the whole bigger mucho gig. Had a stalker when I was about 16 to 17 years old. They somehow got a hold of my number and would text me at all hours of the day. Sometimes just to let me know they knew when I had people over or tell me that I'm coming home awfully late. They would also tell me of all the other times they saw me throughout the day. I would block the number, and they would just keep using new numbers to text me on. Ended up filing a police report, but never got anything out of it. Cops even had the nerve to joke around and say it's because you're pretty. You should be flattered. Found out it was a childhood friend's father, posted him publicly on social media with photos that put things to an end. I had a stalker when I was about 16 to 17 years old. They somehow got a hold of my number and would text me at all hours of the day. Sometimes just to let me know they knew when I had people over or tell me that I'm coming home awfully late. They would also tell me of all the other times they saw me throughout the day. I would block the number, and they would just keep using new numbers to text me on. Ended up filing a police report, but never got anything out of it. Cops even had the nerve to joke around and say it's because you're pretty. You should be flattered. Found out it was a childhood friend's father, posted him publicly on social media with photos that put things to an end. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years had been stalking me online and gotten my passwords to some accounts. Don't share passwords over multiple accounts. And she ended up impersonating me online for years without my knowledge. She catfished people with my pics on dating sites, created a fake Twitter pretending to be me, and Instagram, and even hijacked my old Reddit account. The people who found out she was using my identity told me about it, then tried to blackmail me with the information, with the pretense that they would convince authorities that it was actually me catfishing people and so on. They also claimed she was asking people for money in my name, but refused to show me proof of that. I had to do a deep cleaning of my online presence and confront the person who had been impersonating me. It took a long time, but I got her to stop and I got the blackmailers off my back. Be careful online, kids. A former patient. They were a bad addict and was acting out on the unit trying to get medicated. They for some reason targeted me over other staff, as why they were flipping out. Well, they made a big mistake by threatening to hurt me if they didn't get benzos, because they just got discharged instead. Well, they then went into the staff parking lot, and was waiting for me to get out. The police got called and they got the person to leave. Unfortunately didn't arrest them. Anyway, they kept coming around the hospital for some reason, still targeting me. They called and got my last name from the operator, which was lots of fun. They got my address somehow. At this point I had a temporary restraining order against them. They had a warrant out for something else and a cop had pulled them over for some reason. They were less than a mile from my house. They admitted they were coming to find me. Later I was contacted by police informing me of what happened and to tell me they had been arrested. They ended up in jail, not just for stalking or threatening, but armed robbery, assault, drug possession. They also killed someone while in jail, so they are probably never getting out. I really don't get why they had such a problem with me. I had interacted very little with them, and prior to them going off on me there wasn't anything negative that happened. It was an ex-boyfriend. He was constantly trying to get in touch with me. I blocked him from texting or emailing so he would drive through my neighborhood or mail things to my house. When telling him to stop didn't work, I could mostly ignore it. We had been broken up for about a year, and I hadn't heard from him in maybe a few months. I was out of state, in the US, at a geek convention. I parked my car in a huge lot with hundreds of other cars for the weekend, and when one came back to it, there was a very specific gift that could only be from him, under my windshield wiper. I took him to court and asked for a restraining order, but he told the judge he just happened to see my car and wanted to leave me a gift. The judge said that seemed reasonable, and he was probably just trying to be friendly. The judge did not care about the previous 2 years of abuse. Fortunately, I did get a signed agreement that he would leave me alone, or I would be granted the request for a TRO. After that I got a new phone and new accounts, passwords, because I'm pretty sure he had to have access to my messages, banking, or email to be able to know where I was. Realizing I hadn't heard from him because he had just found another way to keep an eye on me, was probably the scariest part. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to see more videos like this one.